Now, 4 British Christians have gone to the European Court of Human Rights appealing against what they see as religious discrimination in the workplace. They include a check-in clerk who clashed with British Airways over wearing a cross, and a registrar who said she couldn't carry out civil partnerships. Andrew Marsh of Christian Concern believes their cases show Christianity itself is under threat in Britain. We were just talking about this is his Sunday Stand.
Many of us think of Britain as a Christian country, but I believe that a new, aggressive form of atheism is in danger of making us an anti-Christian country. For centuries, Christianity has provided the house in which we, as a society, live. Christianity has given rise to our common values, our laws, our freedoms. But now that house is under attack. A new form of secularism has arisen. It's atheistic, aggressive, and antagonistic. It tells us that Christianity is a danger to our society, a virus that needs to be eradicated. It is seeking to dismantle our Christian heritage and to remove expressions of Christianity from public life. And it reserves special hostility for those who dare to stand up against it. Christian nurses, doctors, foster carers, a magistrate, teachers, local council workers have been pushed out of their jobs. This new aggressive atheism, preaching its doctrine of survival of the fittest, is producing a society that is increasingly cold, competitive, and cruel. I fear for what our children will inherit if this tide is not reversed.
Well, you can join in by webcam or make your point by phone, text, email or online. And I'm delighted to say we're joined by Andrew Marsh of Christian Concern, who made that film. It's an organisation campaigning, they say, to infuse a biblical worldview into every aspect of society. I'm sure you enjoyed our last discussion. Andrew, I mean, let's start with you then. I mean, Are we in danger? If you take his perspective seriously, are we not in danger of becoming anti-Christian in a way in this country?
Absolutely not. And I think I can't see any evidence or any reason to believe almost any of the assertions or claims that were made in that video just now. I think it's completely the opposite of reality. Firstly, I don't think that it's the case that Christianity is somehow a victim or under attack, or that, you know, this house... It's an interesting metaphor given the first discussion today, the idea that the house of Christianity is under attack. The question being what force presumably is proportionate to use it.
And who's the victim?
It depends exactly. Who's the victim? I mean, Christianity is not being attacked in that sort of structural political way in this country. Quite the opposite. Just look at a few examples of how Christianity still retains enormous power. Okay, just one quick example then. Look at our state-funded schools. A third of our state-funded schools are run by religious groups, most of them by the Church of England. There are bishops in our parliament. Christianity retains a political power totally out of proportion to the number of people in the country who are Christian. And a lot of this sort of fiction about Christians being persecuted, I think, is a narrative designed to whip up a sort of reaction amongst Christians.
Andrew Marsh, take that.
Well, the issue is about trajectory. It's about the direction of travel. There's no denying that we still enjoy many aspects of our Christian heritage for the good of all, but things have changed, and I think there is a deliberate agenda, and it's been particularly prevalent in the last decade or so, that presents Christianity as hostile and as a danger to society, and that has actually caused a widespread anxiety in society more generally. Also allowed Christianity to be ridiculed and not given the chance to respond. But there is a hostility. In these cases that have gone to the European Court of Human Rights, very unusual for the European Court of Human Rights to hear Article 9, freedom of thought, and that's, remember what we're talking about, freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Very few cases admitted, and these cases have...
I just want to bring in Francesca briefly, because a lot of the detail of these cases is in the detail. In the case of the BA clerk, she later got permission to wear it. The BA just changed the rules. So is there a sense that Christians perhaps are trying to make a visual point about their identity in a way that perhaps Muslims do because they wear a scarf or
absolutely,
a turban?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things about the case with the BA woman was the fact that she was allowed to wear the cross, but just underneath her clothes. She claimed she was being persecuted and discriminated against, and she compared herself to Muslim women who are able to,
well, crucially,
to wear...
British Airways changed the rules subsequently, and she can now, and everyone can wear these things.
Absolutely.
So why is she going to, you know, I mean, there's a question of, is that really religious discrimination if the problem has been sorted?
Well,
Andrew?
the problem was, as a result of media coverage, I think, around this case, and British Airways took a sensible decision, and that's good. We welcome that.
Was it persecution if the problem was sorted?
I think this is the critical issue. The critical issue at stake in these cases is whether these 4 Christian individuals could have been respected and their Christian faith accommodated without any risk of damage or detriment.
But in the end,
to the
it was.
rights of the
I have to
and the
say
reality
that
is they could have been.
I'm so sorry, but I think in the context of the Western world, where Christianity is still the main cultural religion, to claim persecution and discrimination when in other parts of the world religious and non-religious groups really are being persecuted, really are being discriminated against, I think it's borderline offensive.
I mean, I agree with that, and I also think that it's worth saying that these cases, you know, they've been lost again and again and again in the English courts, and they've been lost frequently because courts have found that there isn't any persecution or discrimination going here. But again and again, political Christian lobby groups have used them to create a totally false narrative of persecution. It's actually good for your cause when these cases are lost. You know, the more they're lost and the more it shows that people, you know...
OK, let Andrew Marsh respond to that.
Let me come back to that point in
yeah.
a second. First, Francesca's point just about the persecution. Yes, absolutely. There are not Christians being killed in this country, and we give great thanks for that. We do remember that more Christians lose their lives for their faith than any other religious believers around the world. But the reality of these cases is that people are losing jobs, livelihoods, reputation and career. And if I can just make a quick analogy, if you have 2 people with cancer, and one is in the early stages and one is in the latter stages, of course this is the one that you give attention to and devote attention to helping them. But you don't say, well, that's no problem at all, we'll just see how it works out.
It's
about dealing with the issue, and these cases highlight what is happening.
They do not. They are being abused. They do not highlight what is happening because they do not demonstrate Christian persecution. They are taken strategically, and the persecution layer is added on by the media and by lobby groups like yours.
We have to leave that just a minute because I want to bring in a couple of contributors. We have Catherine Heseltine joining us from the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. What do you make of the idea that Christians are sort of, you know, exaggerating a situation for their own agenda?
Well, as a Muslim, I can understand what it's like to have religious beliefs that are important to you and to want to live in accordance with those beliefs. And I think Muslims will feel solidarity with Christians who want to safeguard their rights to practice their religion. In fact, in Islam, Christians have a very special status as people of the book. We share the same Abrahamic tradition, believe in the same prophets. So,
not in Muslim countries necessarily, though, Catherine. I'm sure you'd agree, like Saudi Arabia.
But according to the Quran, Christians have this special status as people of the book alongside Jews and
I know, but briefly, we're focusing on how it works in law. Do you think that Christians are sort of fighting back because maybe they think Muslims have a special status? Sharia law is being talked about as having a special status, headscarves and so on.
Well, I see this as something where we have issues in common when it comes to religious dress. I can personally emphasise, because my headscarf doesn't affect my ability to do my job at all, equally a Christian wearing their crucifix, it doesn't stop them doing their job well, and therefore to sack them for wearing it would be pure discrimination.
All right. Catherine, I want to leave it there just for a moment, because I want to bring in, thank you, I want to bring Peter Tatchell, the human rights activist. Peter, you're familiar with, you know, the issues of groups who've been regarded as marginalised or persecuted in the past. Do you have sympathy with cases like these Christians going to the European Court?
Well, I think the issue is one of freedom of expression, so I would defend the right of people of faith to wear discrete religious symbols, but I do have some anxiety about what door that might open. If Christians can wear symbols, well, why not supporters of the BNP or EDL? I would hate to see that. You know, that would be very, very offensive and threatening to many people. There's also, of course, this issue about persecution. I concur totally. Christians are not being persecuted in this country, and it's an insult to the Christians who are being persecuted in Saudi Arabia, Pakistan and elsewhere, who I support and defend. Those are real victims of persecution. In this country, Christians are not being persecuted. They are simply being denied the right to discriminate against others that they used to. For example, until fairly recently with the new anti-discrimination laws, Christians used to be able to discriminate against Muslims and Jews, gay people and women. Now the law says they can't. To deny them the right to discriminate is not persecution. It's saying that Christians should abide by the equality laws like everyone else.
Peter, let me put that to Andrew Marsh. There are equality laws that our democracies agreed on. If someone doesn't want to do a civil partnership, then they should change jobs, is the argument Peter's making.
I think the issue is about how we can balance various rights, and there is strong protection under the European Convention of Human Rights for freedom of thought, conscience and religion.
But when it clashes with the law, and the law says gay people are entitled to get counselling and they're entitled to a civil partnership, you're saying, no, I don't have to do this if I don't believe in gay people's rights.
Let's take and this is where the detail of these cases is important, I think. The issue...
It's the principle.
No, the detail of the cases, because if we take someone like Gary McFarlane, he was a relationships counsellor. He gave relationships counselling to anyone who would come to him. He began to undertake a training course in a very specific form of sex therapy, psychosexual sex therapy. In the process of that course, he expressed that he might have a hesitation about giving sex therapy to homosexual couples.
Theoretical.
It was theoretical. The situation had never arisen. It was in the context of a private... He was being
this
honest.
Is contested. This is contested. I mean, it's difficult.
That he was expressing his view and wasn't actually refusing
this is the policing
to treat
of
someone.
thought.
No,
that's the claim.
I mean, you know, that okay. We can't get into all the facts of the cases because they're cases that have gone through the employment tribunal and then the appeal tribunal and then the courts.
The principle is it about thought rather than breaking the law?
No, it's not. If a counsellor who has signed on when he signed his contract of employment, for example, to say that he will abide by equal opportunities and treat people equally, if that person then says, I am not going to, I would not or will not, even would not, I would not give treatment to people because I didn't agree with their lifestyle, or I was happy to discriminate against them on the basis of sexual orientation or race or disability or whatever, then that is unacceptable. And it's certainly, an employer saying, oh, I'm sorry, you've breached your contract of employment, so we'll have to not have you here anymore. That certainly doesn't amount to religious persecution of Christians again.
I want to bring in Rob Joy here, who's a pastor. What's your view on the law? Would you break it if you felt it conflicted with your Christian belief?
Yeah, I mean, it's not one of my life's ambitions, but obviously, as a Christian, as a passionate Christian, I believe that the Word of God is final. And if a law contradicted that, then for me, it's the Word of God every time. And as an ex-career criminal and an ex-drug addict, I know that the gospel of Jesus Christ was the only message, after searching for many other messages, that was able to set me free. And so I believe passionately in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I believe that no law will change it, and
no persecution will stop it. Is there anything in British law that you wouldn't do? For example, would you refuse to counsel a gay couple or offer sex therapy as part of your job?
I would welcome anybody into my church and into my office for counselling and stuff, but yeah, I do believe that the Word of God is final, and the Word of God does promote man and wife.
Rob, thank you,
and
Andrew.
not two men or two women.
Okay.
And then another question for Rob is, would he be willing to bear the consequences? I mean, take an analogy. I might really, really want to be a vicar, because you get a house and you get a nice, job and you get to talk to people and help people. I can't be a vicar because I don't believe, in the Christian God, and I'm not willing to lie about it. So I accept the burden of my beliefs that I can't be a vicar. Employment opportunity denied. It's a shame, but there it is.
Andrew Cox, I've just got to say, with the example of the Church of England, they're still dithering about whether or not to have women bishops. Anywhere else in law, the idea that you couldn't have a woman boss would be illegal. Aren't there enough opt-outs for religion without trying to impose them into civil society?
No, this is about the importance of religion. So in the European Convention of Human Rights, there are strong protections for freedom of thought, conscience and religion. And the reason for that is that it's widely recognised that those things are important for a civilised society and for protecting other freedoms. So
you're saying we've got the balance wrong?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that these cases have had to go to Europe is because there is an attitude issue with not recognising the value of our Christian heritage and the freedoms that in the bigger picture, because it actually gives us a foundation and a framework for our society.
Okay, Francesca,
I think this basically reflects the fact that there's a bit of a disinterest in the Church of England and its Christian culture in this country at the moment. There has been for quite a few years, as those stats demonstrated. And within Christianity, and particularly in what's called the Gospel of Jesus by Rob there, there's a sense in which Christians need to be prepared in the New Testament for persecution. This is all about modern-day Christians trying to identify with their Christian ancestors and to make themselves feel a little bit more...
We have to leave it there, I'm sorry, but I think everyone's had to go. I think we tried to be fair. I want a couple of viewers' comments. Anonymous one, people are being made to feel ashamed for being Christians. It's not acceptable. Make a change from Britain being persecuted by... I'm not sure I read that one. Sarah says, turning small molehill issues into mountains of persecution does Christianity no favours at all. Thank you all so much.